have a wonderful institution here in Missouri that's supported and started by Southern Baptists called the Missouri Baptist Children's Home. Everybody knows what that is, right? Well, actually, you really don't. There's a lot of ministries that they're involved in that you've probably never heard about. And we're going to have, again, one of those representatives come within the next year or so to share about all the great things they're doing. Of course, their main ministry that we're aware of is they try to give a place for children that have no home, a place to come, and hopefully be adopted into other families. Wonderful thing. But there's some ground rules at the Missouri Baptist Children's Home, and that is the families need to be families the way we believe the Bible defines them. In other words, Tom and Joe that might be married in legal terms would not be eligible to adopt a child from the Missouri Baptist Children's Home. Makes sense. We want to, support the biblical family. We believe children are best brought up in a biblical family. But that's under attack today. Many states have passed laws, including Illinois, which require places like children's homes that do adoption to allow anyone to be able to adopt. They've made it illegal for us to set these ground rules that we believe are biblical. And there are Christian adoption agencies throughout the United States closing because of these rules. And those who haven't changed the rules yet are under attack. And we're called evil because we discriminate against certain groups of people. Now, the fact is, most adoption agencies aren't Baptist or Christian, and there are plenty of places for others to go to adopt a child. And we're simply trying to follow our beliefs as we believe it. But we are under attack for doing wrong for the things that we are doing right. We're going to see that happen more and more in America, where we have situations where we do what we know Jesus has taught us to do, and we do it in love, yet we're attacked because it goes against what the world is trying to propagandize people to believe. Well, Jesus found himself in a situation where he did something right, and he was accused of doing wrong. So if you have your Bibles, turn with me to the book of Luke chapter 11, verses 14 and 15. And we're going to see Jesus do something really wonderful. And the Pharisees are there to attack it. Like that never happens, right? It starts out in verse 14. Jesus is driving out a demon that was mute. When the demon left, the man who had been mute, in other words, he could not talk, spoke, and the crowds were amazed. But some of them said, by Beelzebub, the prince of demons, he's driving out a demon. In other words, Jesus healed a man of demon possession, and he was accused of doing it through evil power. Now, demons are evil. Why would Jesus, if he was evil, drive out evil out of a man and give him a chance of life again? But that was the accusation. Christ was accused of working for Satan when he drove out that demon. Isn't that interesting? Today, often in today's society, you can do the right thing, and you'll be accused of doing that which is wrong. Now, who was Beelzebub? Well, Beelzebub was one of the names of the Philistine god Baal. We see it in 2 Kings chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. It meant Lord of the Flies. I've always liked that, Lord of the Flies. We had some cattle on our property, and when the cattle came, 5 billion flies came with them. And they were everywhere. And eventually they got moved and the flies died down. Why were all the flies there? Because what do cattle do after they eat? They deposit all over the ground, right? Those nice little deposits. And that attracts the flies because they're very, very attracted to stinky stuff, okay? And by calling the devil Lord of the Flies, we're saying that he's involved in a lot of stinky stuff too, spiritually. A variation of Beelzebub is Beelzebul, which means Lord of the dwelling, and that's found also in the Bible. And the Jews often use Beelzebub as another name for Satan himself. So by saying that he was doing it in the power of Beelzebub, he was saying that Jesus was doing this in the power of Satan himself. Now, Jesus immediately points out in verses 17 and 18, which we're not going to read today, that that would be illogical. Satan would not be driving out demons because it would be attacking and defeating himself. That's pretty logical, isn't it? So when we're attacked for doing wrong as Christians today in our society, we need to point out, well, if it's so wrong, how come so much good is happening with us doing what Jesus tells us to do? Recently, one of our high-level politicians was attacked on the media for the fact he had a simple rule. It's called the Billy Graham rule. And it states that I will never be alone with a woman eating dinner or in the evening in a room by myself, unless my wife or some other staff member is present. That's a very wise thing. Okay? Why? Because we've heard about what's been going on. The Me Too movement's pointed out so much sexual abuse going on in our society and sexual harassment. So to me, this would be the logical response to protect women and men from that kind of temptation or accusation. Yet this politician was viciously attacked for several weeks and still comes up for the fact that he was discriminating against women. You can't win for losing sometimes, folks. And that's what Jesus was experiencing. Doing the right thing, freeing this man from this demon, meant that he was under attack for doing evil of all things. But Jesus stood up and said, "Excuse me, this is irrational." Today we need to be ready, folks. We need to be ready that the world increasingly accepts Satan's secular values, and Satan is in control, and he's opposed to God's rule and God's plan and God's kingdom. We're going to be under attack for doing the right thing. Things that just 50, 40, or even 30 years ago were considered the right action will become the evil action. And many people will buy the propaganda through the media and their educational institutions. It's just the way it is. We need to stand up. We need to speak out. Now here's the problem. Too often, unlike Jesus, we remain silent. Why? Because we don't get a big debate. We don't get a big fight. We don't come across as combative. And certainly there are Christians out there who are so combative, they hurt the cause of the kingdom of God rather than help it. You've met some of those people, haven't you? There's some of those so-called Christians, you see them walk in the room, you want to go the other way. But we're talking about doing it in love, but speaking out in love and wisdom for the truth of what God has taught. That's what Jesus did. We need to do the same thing, and we need to realize we need to continue to do what is right, even if we're accused of doing wrong. But what happens, folks, is that too often we're shut down by the attacks of the world. We're afraid to speak up. We're afraid to stand up to those demons out there of lies, those demons of trying to take control of our society. We'd just rather be quiet. And we're not peacemakers, we're peace wishers. Will you stand up and do the right thing like Jesus and speak out? That's proper. So why are we accused of doing wrong? Well, it tells us in Luke chapter 11, verses 21 and 22, these words: "When a strong man, fully armed, guards his own house, his possessions are safe. But when someone stronger attacks and overpowers him, he takes away the armor in which the man trusted and divides up the spoils," or the plunder. Now, who is this strong man fully armed? Well, Jesus talked about Satan himself. What he's saying is Satan may be in control of portions of society, his house, that's his kingdom control over parts of the world. But the fact is, there's someone stronger. Who's that stronger person? Jesus. Try that again. Who's that stronger person?
God. Jesus.
That's right. So why are we so often unwilling to speak up, speak out, and stand up and act out that which Jesus wants to do? Jesus is stronger than the strong man. Jesus is stronger than the world. Jesus is stronger than Satan. Do you believe that?
Yes. Yes.
Then why don't we live it? Satan is strong. It says right here, when a strong man fully armed guards his own house, his possessions are safe. And there's so much of the world right now that's in Satan's house. They're under his control. And they are controlled by him, and Satan thinks he has it worked out. But Jesus is stronger. And Christ is expecting his people, that's us. For we are his hands, we are his voice. We need to make the choice to speak up and do what he wants us to do. Note it says very clearly, when someone stronger attacks and overpowers the strong man. We have been called by God to be on the attack, not with physical violence, not with physical weapons, but with the tactics and the love of God. It says that we are to be as wise as serpents, but as gentle as doves in the Bible. The problem is we're doing neither. We're not under the attack, we're going like this. We kind of hide and hope that the world goes away. It's so easy to cocoon yourself into your own little world of your family, your friends, and your church, and never step out of it to attack Satan in the name of Jesus Christ, doing it his way. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there are some Christians on the attack all the time, but they're not attacking in the ways of Jesus. They're attacking in the ways of legalism, judgmentalism, and Phariseeism. We're not talking about that. What we're talking about here is doing it the way Jesus would do it, because he is stronger. We are to be in the attack. It says in the Bible that Jesus would build his church, and the gates of hell will not prevail. In other words, we're under attack, attacking the gates of hell itself. And they will not prevail if we show up and attack. But we've got to show up. On July 25th, 1944, the Allies found themselves stalemated 7 weeks after D-Day. The Germans had them hemmed in, and though our beachhead after D-Day as we attacked France was secure, we couldn't seem to make any inroads any further. They had us hemmed in. The British for several weeks had been attacking in the east and had been stopped. So the Allied command got together, and General Omar Bradley, from Missouri by the way, came up with a plan called Operation Cobra that was to break the whole thing wide open. It was an offensive plan in the west while the British held the Germans in the east. It began with over 2,000 American and British bombers at one time dropping bombs on German positions. At that time, it was the largest bombardment in the history of the universe. And it completely, totally destroyed the German lines. After that, 4 armored infantry divisions would immediately attack in a small area with a massive punch to the Germans. Up to then, the Germans thought they had us. But because of Operation Cobra, we blasted through the German lines, and the whole German defensive line for 50 miles completely disintegrated. And victory was just a few months away. Why? Because we decided to go on the attack. We didn't say, as the Allies, well, we'll just kind of hold our own and hope the Germans will get tired. We were there to win the war, and we're here to win the war for Jesus today. If we're losing the war, is it because Jesus is too weak?
No, we are.
Or is it because we're not doing what we need to do? It says right here, Jesus is strong enough. But we're his shock troops. We're the ones on the front lines. And we need to be on the attack. Now, what do I mean? I'm not talking about politics here, okay? To me, politics is not the answer to our future. The answer to our future is Christianity, Jesus Christ. And we need to be involved in our community, sharing the gospel, standing for the truth, and getting out there and being involved, not hiding in our little cocoons. Jesus was out with the people. There was never a time he just hung out at the temple for weeks at times saying, come to me if you want to talk. He was out getting involved in the world, and we need to do so as well. We need to be ready, folks. We need to respond to God's call to action when he gives it to us. We need to be ready by being trained, equipped, prayed up, and willing to stand up and speak up. We need to be ready to follow his commands, just as those troops, July 25th, 1944, ready to move on the command of the commanding general, Omar Bradley. Because they were willing to do what their commander told them to do, the victory was assured in just a few days. Will we do the same thing? Folks, it's so easy to be so involved in our lives that we never get on the front lines and get involved. There's so many opportunities to do it in so many places. And for each one of us, it'll be different ministries fitting our particular gift and talent mix. Possibly you'll be on the front lines by being involved in the food pantry here in town, helping those with needs, but also having the opportunity to share the gospel on occasion. Maybe you'll be involved somewhere with the schools or in other places in the community. There are opportunities everywhere to be on the attack. Will we be so? One example of an area that's a great need, and there may or may not be anyone here that feels called to do this, but you know, we need more foster families, foster parents. It's a great need in our community. Pray about that. If you love kids and you've got the time and the home and the room, you might want to do that. You know, that's just one example of something I bet you've never thought of, being a foster parent. And think about that. When they come live in your home, they get to go to church with you. You get to talk to them about how Jesus has changed your life. What an opportunity. We need to be ready, folks. Are you ready? Are you so busy you miss it when God is giving you your marching orders from Him? It says we are to be under the attack, invading Satan's territory. But also, today we need to be Christ's kingdom that is overcoming Satan's power. Now, I believe what the Bible says. Do you?
Yes.
It's my guide for living. It's God's marching orders for me. It's His instruction manual for life. And it says very, very clearly that Jesus is stronger. And He will take away the armor that the strong man had, and then we will divide up the spoils. Christ has already overpowered Satan on the cross.
Yes.
It's an accomplished fact. The question is, will we live it in our lives? He wants to overpower Satan every day in this community. Christ will overpower Satan in the last days with the final victories and then the judgment time. But in the meantime, we got to be at work. When Operation Cobra happened after D-Day, it still was hard fighting for another 10 months. It did not happen overnight. The victory was guaranteed, but we still had to fight the fight till the end. The harder we fought, the greater the victory. The harder we fought, the less casualties long-term occurred. We need to understand that. And our battle is that we are to take away Satan's weapons and armor. We need to, through prayer and through speaking out, through a positive Christian witness and speaking the truth, take away the power that Satan has. Now, it seems like sometimes he controls everything, doesn't it? Turn on the TV and hear what goes on in the news. You got the shootings going on in El Paso and in Dayton, Ohio. You got all the propaganda being hammered at us by the so-called experts and how the world is changing, and we need to change with it. But we need to understand that those are the weapons and tactics of Satan that we need to stand up, overpower, and stop. By the way, in our battle today, there's to be wounded soldiers. Right now, every few days, wounded soldiers come back from overseas, from Afghanistan or Iraq. Some have lost arms. They've lost legs. They'll never be quite the same. None of them plan to be wounded. You think anyone ever plans to be wounded? I don't think anyone ever goes in the army and goes, hey, I'm going to go fight for my country, lose an arm, lose a leg. Of course not. But it happens. Because the enemy's trying to destroy us. But folks, the same is true in the Christian army. When you're doing God's work, you're on the front lines fighting His fight, doing it His way, some of us will be wounded. You'll be hurt in some way. Your reputation will be attacked and trashed. You might lose friends that you thought you could always count on. Satan will start attacking your family and your marriage and your church, because if you're doing something, Satan doesn't like it. The strong man will fight back. And some of us will be wounded. Now here's the question. If you're wounded, are you willing to let God heal you again and use you again? So often when we are wounded, we're surprised. For some reason we think the Christian life is going to be unicorns and rainbows, and that nothing's ever going to go wrong. Well, folks, when you're fighting spiritual warfare, there's going to be wounded people. We need to be ready for that. I don't want it to happen. I'm not going to necessarily expose myself to Satan's fire. But if I'm wounded, that's a part of the fight. And I'm going to count on the Lord to heal me. But part of his healing process is his spiritual hospital. You know what that's called? The church.
Amen. Amen.
Now here's a big problem. For too long, the church has been the only army that shot its own wounded. Sometimes when people are spiritually wounded, we're disappointed in them. They're finding themselves in great depression as Satan's attacking, and we're kicking them while they're down, saying, you need to get up, come on, just have faith. Okay? Folks, don't be one of those people with all the platitudes when someone's hurting. You know what we need to do when someone's hurting? We need to sit down and cry with them for a while.
Yes, yes.
We need to say, I'm so sorry. Let's pray about it. Rather than say, well, if you were stronger, you wouldn't have this problem. If you just have faith, it's all going to be okay. Well, that's true to a point. But all of us are human beings. In case you haven't noticed, you're not robo-Christian. We all will find ourselves going through times that are tough. We struggle with our faith. We struggle with depression or anxiety. We struggle with our beliefs for a while. God understands. Will his church understand? Will we be a hospital for the spiritually wounded that we can help them heal through love, support, encouragement, and proper instruction when it's appropriate? Or we can be ones that beat up on people because mistakes were made or they find themselves struggling spiritually. They're going to be wounded. Will we be a part of the solution for those that are? Now, some wounded people are permanently crippled, just like soldiers sometimes. They're so badly hurt, psychologically or spiritually, that they never do bounce back. Will we be there for them? Day after day after day after day, continuing to love, continuing to support, continuing to do whatever we need to do to let them know you're part of our army, you're part of our church family. We will never desert you, whether you're permanently crippled spiritually or not. We're always going to be there for you. We also need to realize this. Satan uses certain tactics, okay? Some of those tactics, for example, are accusations. Some of those tactics are lies, slander. Now, here's one of the biggest problems I've run into in this town. I love this town. It's filled with wonderful people. But we have something called the gossip machine, the Houston gossip machine. Because it's a small town, everybody knows what's going on with everybody else. And because there's not a lot to do, unless you just want to go watch the cows eat grass sometimes, we talk about one another. My daughter the other day said that, I heard about you, Dad. I go, what? She goes, I heard you're a pill popper. Someone had said, they heard someone else say that you pop pills. Me? I have a hard time taking an aspirin because I'm just so anti-pill. But that was what someone had heard someone else say that they saw about me. That's not true, okay? But at the same time, some people are talking about that. That's Satan using lies as one of his weapons to bring down one of the soldiers in the army of God. And you've heard things said about others in this church. And guess what? Sometimes there may be a little bit of truth in things. We're not perfect. Are we going to busy being a part of Satan's gossip machine? Are we going to be busy working for the strong man? Or are we going to be busy talking and working with this stronger man, Jesus Christ? We need to say no to Satan's tactics. We need to say, I'm not going to be a part of that. We need to stand up and confront those that are being used by Satan with the rumor machine and say, you need to quit cut that out. One thing I found is occasionally when someone will tell me something they've heard, I said, would you mind if I go and tell that person what you just told me and that you're the one that told me? Oh, no, don't do that. I said, well, I just might do that if you don't quit doing all this. We need to do that, folks. And today, Christ's kingdom should be dividing up Satan's plunder, Satan's spoils. We need to be under the attack and taking back that which Satan has taken. There are people right now that are captive to Satan's kingdom, and what they believe and how they live. We need to take those back for Jesus Christ. That's the plunder from Satan's kingdom that we take back and give to Jesus for him to use. It says, to the victor belongs the spoils. Today, that plunder is the people, institutions, and culture that Satan controls. It's time to take it back.
Amen.
The plunder, the spoils are to be divided up by Christ for us to use to build his kingdom. You know, there's nothing any more exciting than seeing someone baptized because they made a decision to be a Christian. And a year before, they were living in Satan's kingdom. That's the plunder we take back. And then they change their life and they start to be doing good things for the kingdom of God rather than living for Satan. That's what we're talking about here. We need to take back the plunder and the spoils. Also, we need to understand that the spoils that are out there are not for us, folks. I'm not here to build Russ's kingdom. You're not here to build your kingdom. We're here to build Jesus' kingdom. And everything that we accomplish, whenever we win victories, we need to be sure it's given to Jesus and given the glory to Jesus when we've had that kind of success. We're here to benefit Christ and his kingdom, not ourselves. It goes on to say, verses 23 through 26, these words. Jesus said, he who is not with me is against me, and he who does not gather with me scatters. When an evil spirit comes out of a man, it goes through arid places, like deserts, seeking rest, and then it does not find it. Then it says, I will return to the house I left. When it arrives, it finds the home swept clean and put in order. Then it goes and takes 7 other spirits more wicked than itself, and they go in and live there. And the final conditions of that man is worse than the first. Now, you know, when I read that when I was younger, I went, huh? I didn't understand. And maybe you going, huh? Let me share with you what's being said here. What's being said here, first of all, when he says, he who is not with me is against me, Jesus is saying, pick a side in this spiritual war. Are you on my side, or are you on the enemy's side? Now, there's a lot of folks that try to stay neutral. You know, I was talking to someone yesterday that said, well, you know, I kind of believe in God. I'm not an atheist. But I'm just not into the Christian or real spiritual stuff. Occasionally I'll pray to him when I'm in a jam. Now, he thinks he's a great guy, and he is in many ways. But whose side is he on? He's on the Satan's, even if he's not understanding that he is working for Satan. If you are not working for God, you're working for Satan, either directly or indirectly. You may not be doing a lot of terrible things, but you're not helping what Jesus wants you to do. In this spiritual war, we need to take a side. Those who don't pick Christ, like this friend of mine, is unwittingly working for the enemy, even if they think they are neutral. One of the popular statements you hear a lot with younger adults under the age of 40 is, well, I wouldn't call myself religious, but I'm spiritual. You heard that one? I'm spiritual. I believe in some kind of God, whoever he or she may be. And they think, I'll be spiritual enough just in case there's a heaven I might be able to squeeze in there. Well, the fact is, there's one way to the Heavenly Father. It's Jesus Christ. And if you're working for him, you're going to make it. If you're not, you're against him. Now, even when the person does good on his own, without Christ, they have an emptiness that Satan can fill again. It's not uncommon to hear about people who are struggling with psychological and spiritual issues to go to a secular counselor and get help for a time. But then later on, they fall right back into what they were in before. If it's not, it may even be worse. Addicts have a big problem with that. To go to rehab, the best that the world has to offer as far as instruction and ideas. They are better for a while. They get back home. But then again, they find themselves maybe addicted again in an even worse way. Most people who go to rehab end up failing rehab. Why? Because without Jesus, you simply empty the house, life for a time, and then Satan comes back and takes over again. And sometimes it's worse. That's what Jesus talked about. Any kind of healing process that doesn't have Jesus involved in it has a high likelihood of being temporary at best. And Satan comes back in and takes over. We need to understand that just because someone is doing better with their struggles, if they don't have Jesus in their life, they're going to be in trouble again, most probably in the future. There's no safety from evil except through Jesus Christ. Today, it's time for each one of us to pick a side. It's time for us to actively step up to the war that we're involved in. And folks, it is a war, don't you agree?
Yes.
I had a lady in one of my churches, just the sweetest lady in the world, very peace-loving. You know, she would never, ever be hurting someone with her words or her actions. She would never punch anybody. And she told me one time, I don't want to get involved in the spiritual warfare you're talking about. And I said to her, it's too late. You already are, whether you want to be or not. Are you ready to pick a side if you haven't yet?
Yes.
Have you picked a side, but you've been on the sidelines, watching the conflict, but not being involved? Maybe you've picked a side, but you've been so busy with your life, you've not gotten involved in the spiritual war going on. Now, for each person, it'll be different. Some people will be more involved than others. But each one of us has a role to play. When you're in the military, you have your frontline combat troops. They're the ones doing the shooting and the dying. And then you have behind them, sometimes 15 or 20 miles, your rear echelon troops. Your rear echelon troops are your supply troops. They're the people who drive the trucks. They're the people that keep all the paperwork going. And believe me, the military has a lot of paperwork because it's government. But you know what? They're necessary. They're just as necessary for the war as those on the front lines. Those on the front lines may look down on those in the back, but you know what? It's kind of nice to have a supply sergeant that's sending you the ammunition and the food you need. You need them. And so your role may not be gloriously exciting. You may not be on the front lines, even though you'd like to be, because God has a different plan for you. But every position in the war is important. But you got to show up to the fight, folks. You got to show up. Are you ready to pick a side and show up? And above all, you need to fight with God's weapons, not Satan's weapons. You don't fight fire with fire. You fight the fire of Satan with the weapons that God gives us. Wisdom, love, courage. But we need to be sure that we're not worse than the enemy we're fighting today. Are you ready to fight the fight? Are you ready to stand up and when something is happening good in the name of Jesus, stand up for it and not allow people to turn it into something evil? What's God want you to do today? Let's all stand as God speaks to us.